Is DC fast charging what you really need? Thanks for joining me on another EV Charging Minute. I'm Tony Booth, your host, also the founder of Stay in Charge and the sponsor, so to speak, of this podcast where we talk about all kinds of things, commercial and hospitality EV charging. So today in this episode, we're going to dig in a little bit about DC fast charging, right? We all know, we hear about it. It's the big thing that's talked about all over, right? And if you are like many commercial real estate property owners or managers that have reached out to someone over the past year or two and spoke to somebody about EV charging or just started contemplating it, you may have heard, like many, oh, if you're going to attract EV drivers, you need to have DC fast charging, right? Like people try to say that all the time, like, oh, you need to have the fastest thing out there. And what we say here is not so fast. Like, don't, that's not necessarily the case. So let's really slow down, make sure that we're setting realistic expectations and goals. So before I jump into today's topic, a little more in depth on what's the right charging solution for you, I thought let's take a look at DC fast charging first, okay? Most of what we've talked about in this podcast is a lot to do with level 2 charging because that's where a lot of charging is going to take place, okay? DC fast charging is the stuff that's kind of replacing the gas station, so to speak. So in DC fast charging, we are almost like direct lining into the battery, allows us to bypass the onboard charger, allows us to put the electrons into the battery much, much faster than when we're using a typical level 2 AC charger. So it's a very efficient, quick way to charge a vehicle. However, that also comes with some high ticket pricing, right? So when you look at a DC fast charger, it's going to be expensive compared to a level 2. Most of them, if not the majority of them, require 480 volt, 3-phase power, which is often means some utility upgrades in order to put one at your property. So when we look at that, that all rings up in capital expense, right? That's a big capital expense in order to install a DC fast charging solution. And so we need to understand where that fits, right? So we really kind of start looking at the whole market because, here in this podcast, I always want to try to educate everybody and make you understand. And one of the things that I've always recognized about the EV charging market that is not always on the top of the discussion is what we call the ABCs of charging, the always be charging. And what that means is for EV charging adoption to really work well and for it to become very ubiquitous, for EVs to become ubiquitous, there needs to be enough charging infrastructure so I can always be charging. So when I have the opportunity, I want to charge. Well, when you look at it that way, then you're looking at, I don't need to necessarily be able to charge my vehicle from 20% to 80% every time I plug up, right? That's the gas station mentality that we're all used to. We're used to driving the vehicle, the light comes on, pull into the closest gas station, throw the pump in and fill it up. Well, with EV charging and EV driving, we got to shift our mindset. And what we want to be looking at is when I pull into the cafe, I want to get out of my car and I want to plug up because I'm going to be there for 30, 40 minutes or maybe a little bit longer. When I leave there and I get to work, if my work has a charger, I want to plug up and I'm going to get some charging again. When I go to lunch, I might plug up. When I go to the gym, I'm going to plug up. When I go to the restaurant at night or the theater, whatever it is, I'm going to go to places where I can charge. So instead of running my 300 miles until I run out of gas, when I drive an EV, when I get to my destination, I want to put some more electrons back in. So we're constantly adding back to the battery. So we might drive 20 miles. We're going to be somewhere for 20, 30 minutes. So we plug in and we add 15 miles back into our battery. So the reason why this is important to understand is because when you realize the big picture, the long-term scenario, you recognize that the DC fast charging, while has its a very important role in the EV charging infrastructure, it is not the biggest part of that infrastructure. In fact, if you look at some of the studies that are out there, and some of the top industry experts have written about this, and the amount of charging that needs to be installed between now and like 2035 in order to keep up with the demand. When you look at the percentages there of the breakout of where these chargers are, you'll actually see that it's only like 10% of the charging will be this public DC fast charging. So think about that for a minute. If only 10% or maybe a little bit more is DC fast charging, and the rest is some type of, mixed charging bag of private, and it may be some DC, but maybe not fast charging, right? Some mixed bag of charging that most of the studies call like a semi-private or a, private non-residential charging. When you looked at that's going to be most of the charging, then you start to say, well, man, maybe I don't need DC fast charging like everybody's telling me. Maybe I don't need to worry about that person getting their car filled up in 15 minutes or less. Okay. So what I want to go through today as we dive into this is we have to understand, why are you adding EV charging at your property? Okay. Why do we want to do this? Why are we even considering adding EV charging? And a lot of that's going to come back to what your commercial property does. If you're a hotel property, what are your goals in adding EV charging? Are you trying to attract some additional people to come in and spend the night and charge overnight? If you have a restaurant there, are you trying to get more people to stop in and visit your restaurant or come into your marketplace? Are you on a major highway and thinking that, well, hey, maybe I'll compete with some gas stations? Because all those are feasible goals if they fit your property. So that's why we have to look at this. And what we see is the majority of commercial properties are really doing EV charging as an added amenity or an attraction for customers, not as a form of the majority of your business. Okay. So yes, if you're a gas station, convenience store, you really need to be looking at this saying, I probably need to get the fastest chargers around. In fact, it's going to help you attract more people. Okay. That's one of the benefits that we're, starting to see on the convenience store side is, if you have a bank of stations that are 350 kW and super fast chargers, then you can attract more drivers than the guy across the street with the 120 kW chargers. Why? Because they can get in and out faster. And in that case, a lot of times the drivers are willing to pay more. They might pay 3, 4, 5 cents a kilowatt hour more to get in and out faster. So instead of in the future seeing the corner wars of gas pricing and everybody dropping a half a penny here and a half a penny there, you might start seeing more of a war of, I've got 350 kW chargers, I've got dedicated 400 kW chargers, right? We'll start to see some more competition along the speed of charging and along the amenities that are offered, because I don't really want to sit in a parking lot in a convenience store for 15, 20 minutes while my car charges, right? I want to get out. I want to stretch my legs, maybe sit down under a shaded picnic table, or maybe have a space inside the building. If it's cold area, hot area, whatever. Maybe I want to take my dog or my pet for a walk. There's so many things I could be doing while I'm charging the vehicle that those things become way more important than just the price per kilowatt hour. Okay. When you look at the gas station model, the gas became a commodity. So whoever's selling it cheapest, it didn't matter where I went. But when I look at EV charging, where I'm going to spend maybe twice as long or more at that location, some of those other things start to matter. And that's what we call charger boredom. Like, how do you solve that charger boredom? So, as a gas station, as a convenience store, yes, you probably need the fastest charging out there. But for the rest of us in the commercial real estate space, we need to take a bigger look, a more holistic look at what we're doing, where we're at, and what's happening there. Because it really comes down to the dwell time that your customers are there. Like, once you've looked at your goals, which again, for most of us is going to be, how do we attract more customers? How do we increase the revenue that we're getting from our existing customers? Okay. We're not going out. I don't recommend that if you own a hotel or you own a restaurant or apartment complex, that you go out and decide that you're now going to become the future of a gas station. Okay. That's really not a feasible business model or a recommended business model. What we recommend is that you use EV charging as a lead magnet, as an attraction mechanism to bring more customers in. So when you look at it that way, what really matters is the dwell time. The dwell time is how long will somebody be at your site, at your location on a normal basis. And we can look at that two ways. When we're working with a customer, we look at that two ways. One is, what is your current dwell time? Meaning, what do people currently do when they're at your facility, at your property, and how long are they normally sitting there? How long will that vehicle be parked? That's current. And then we also look at future, because we might be revamping or doing some modifications to a property in order to appeal better to the EV charging market. So maybe there's a situation where the current dwell time is 10 minutes, but because we're going to add some amenities and some other things, like maybe, the picnic tables or the things like that, maybe some hot food or made to order food type stuff, because we're adding that, we now may be increasing that dwell time from 15, 20 minutes to an hour. If that's the case, now we can change how we look at EV charging. So dwell time, if you think about typical properties and locations, right? A convenience store dwell time is 10 minutes or less. We get into QSRs, quick serve restaurants, you're 10 minutes again, 15 minutes max. If you get somebody to eat inside, maybe it's another 10 minutes of them, 15 minutes of them eating. So maybe you got a 30-minute window there. More of a sit-down casual dining restaurant, you might hit into the 45-minute to an hour dwell time. Then you start moving up from there. You get into shopping centers, theaters, movie centers, things like that, where we get into the 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour dwell times. Then you look at even further, you get into apartment complexes, hotels, short-term rentals, anything like that. And we're looking more at the, maybe 5, 6, 8, sometimes 12-hour dwell times. So each one of those allow us to take a look and figure out how to build the right solution for your property. So if you've got a 1 hour dwell time, what we want to look at is how much charging do we want to put back into a battery, and what really matters. Okay. If I'm traveling down a major highway and I'm going to stop and it's getting close to dinner time, I'm going to stop for dinner anyway. I might choose to stop at a restaurant that has a charger. I would hope that while I'm charging, I might have a little bit more than a level 2, because maybe while I'm charging, I can get another 100 miles or 200 miles put back into my battery. So in a situation like that, a high-powered level 2 might work, or we might look at a 30 or 40 kW DC fast charger at a sit-down restaurant. If we look at something quicker, like a quick serve restaurant, that's a trade-off, right? Because now I got to say, how many people can I bring in off the highway to see if I should put a DC fast charger there? And if you're located in the right market, the right locations, Absolutely. Like we see coffee shops, we see cafes, we see people every day doing very well by putting in a DC high powered fast charger. Okay. If you can think about in the right location, mile and a half off the highway, you've got a reason for me to stop there, something different than a convenience store. I'm coming and I'm going to stay there maybe for 30 minutes, 20 minutes, get my charge, spend some time in the cafe or the store. We see that happening all the time. We see these people doing 10, 15 charges a day with a station. That it makes sense. So we got to match that dwell time, because what happens if I need to charge somebody, if I need to put 50% back into a battery in 20, 30 minutes, then I need a pretty expensive unit there. So I'm looking at 120 kW to 240 kW, something like that. So you're talking about a $40,000 to $50,000 charger, possibly even another $50,000, $60,000 in upgrades in order to even install that thing. So if I invest $100,000, I got to sell a lot of coffee, right? So that's why it's important to not just like go, oh yeah, put in a DC fast charger, because we don't need that. If we're putting these in for the right reasons and it's to attract new customers, then my restaurant with a 30 kW that might cost me $25,000 to install might do perfect at attracting me 5 to 10 additional customers every single day. So if I can bring in 10 additional customers every single day with an average ticket price of $50, that's not a bad deal, right? So I got to invest some money, put this thing in, get it promoted, but now I'm bringing in, 10 additional tabletops a day. Pretty good deal, right? Same way as you move up the spectrum on that, the dwell time gets longer. So the longer the dwell time, the less you have to invest in your EV charging infrastructure. So the easier it is to get a return. But we also know that a level 2 charger is not going to necessarily pull somebody in off the highway unless they were already planning on coming in to spend the night or coming in to spend 2 hours walking through the retail shop. Okay. So it all fits very well when you really think about it. When you really think about this whole thing on EV charging and how it all plays out, it fits very well with any commercial real estate location. The key is matching your charging solution with your goals and what you can accomplish with your property and want to accomplish. Because if you're in the middle of a urban or a suburban area and you're not near a major highway and you think that you're going to put a super fast charger at your restaurant, so you're going to invest $100,000 to put this charger there and you're going to get a really fast ROI, you may not. Now, doesn't mean you can't. Again, it all matters of what your demographics are. If there's an apartment complex nearby or condos nearby that don't have charging, you might get a lot of business out of it. But is it really going to give you the right ROI? So that's why when we're working with our customers, we really try to peel that onion back, understand what are the goals, what are the objectives of the system, and how to go about it the right way, right? To us, it's all about right sizing. And I obviously would always recommend that you start small, okay? Even if you feel that, like, even if we decide that we need a DC fast charger at a location, we will typically try to go with something a little smaller to start with. I mean, again, other than a convenience store. If you're a convenience store, you're on a major highway, right location, by God, you got to put the fastest thing you can. But if you're a restaurant in a suburban area and you're saying, oh man, I think this can really work, and we agree there's a lot of draw and demand in the area, we might start with a 30 kW or a 60 kW, because it can save on the upfront cost, get you in, get on the map and see what happens. And then if it becomes like, oh wait, this thing's being used constantly, okay, well now we can upgrade and we know we made a wise investment. So The key to all this, again, is right sizing the solution. So, to answer the original question, do you need DC fast charging? I'm here to tell you, shooting it straight, 75% of the time, the answer is no, you do not. And if you do, it is not a big, super expensive full bank of 20 350 kW chargers, unless you're in that business. Okay. Most of us in the commercial real estate space are going to add EV charging for an amenity for our guest, for a little bit of, a little bit of incremental revenue, some additional attraction, bring some of the right people in. When we're doing that, we want to stay with reasonable investments, building the right systems that match what our customers are coming there for. We're not trying to go into a new market. We're just trying to increase our existing market by helping more customers find us, more customers want to join us. So don't jump out there real fast and say that I've got to get this fastest charger and I got to charge everybody in 20 minutes, because the truth is, as this grows and matures, you'll see people will be way more used to ABC, always be charging, which now allows me as a retail owner, as a hotel, as a commercial property to attract more customers just by having EV charging, just by allowing them to get some added charge into their battery while they spend time with me is going to be enough to increase my customer base and get my ROI on charging. So reach out if you have any questions on this. It really is something that I kind of went longer than I normally do, because it's really important to understand this, because I know a lot of people have went down the path of investing in DC fast charging, and then they're sitting there waiting for people to come. And it's a shame, because you invested money in something that probably didn't need. So that's why I spend a lot of time on this. Again, reach out to us. We're always here to help. Hope you enjoyed today's show. Hope you learned a little bit more about EV charging in the commercial real estate and hospitality space. And that's it for today. We'll see you on the next episode.